In 2017, I had the honor of meeting a man by the name of John Kolker, also known as Ironheart on the Appalachian Trail. I met John when we was in Irwin, Tennessee at Uncle Johnny's. During that conversation, Mr. Kolker shared a tale of overcoming tremendous odds. We ended up becoming friends. And after him hiking 1,000 miles on the Appalachian Trail this year, I felt you needed to hear his story. So tonight, on the Hiker Spotlight, we sit down and we talk to a man that I am honored to call a friend, John Kolker, also known as Ironheart. So I hope you enjoy this interview with a fellow hiker, and most importantly, a patriot, someone I've come to respect. Tonight, we talk to Ironheart. Let's go. This is Teardrop, and welcome to New to the Wild. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with the next Hiker Spotlight, and today I am proud to introduce to you my friend, one of my hiking partners, John Kolker, also known as Ironheart. John, man, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to do this today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Teardrop.
Absolutely, man. How's the weekend going for you?
Well, as you know, I got off the trail probably, I don't know, what is it now, maybe 3.5 weeks ago, and I didn't realize the adjustment would be so brutal. Like just getting back to the real world inside fancy air quotes has been it's been a little frustrating. You know, the simplicity of the trail is definitely very appealing, and oftentimes I want to be back in the woods. So.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you're a hard worker, definitely a conservative out there doing his job. I appreciate that. And so, no, I get it, man. I know how hard it is to go back to the real world and married life and life in general. And I see you've shaved. Why didn't you keep the beard, sir?
Yeah, so I got back. I don't know if you hiked with me when the beard was in its full glory, but there's a funny picture of me side by side with me 3 weeks ago, well, actually 5 weeks ago now, versus me last week, and it's definitely a huge difference. Yeah, I basically got rid of it because it represented being out there, and since I wasn't out there anymore, it just didn't make sense anymore, and I'm trying to get back into the workaday world. I've got some interviews coming up, and quite frankly, I didn't want to scare my potential clients. So.
No, yeah, I agree. You can't see me right now, but I've shaved mine too. So, it is what it is. I get it. Now, John, I met you out there and you had a cause. We'll get into that a little bit later. But one of the things I wanted to ask you is how long you've been hiking in general. How long have you been hiking, whether it be long distance or short hikes?
Yeah, so I guess the first introduction I had with hiking wasn't called hiking at all. It was called forced marching, which was in the Army. And so a forced march or a road march is when you carry a full combat, they call it battle rattle. And in my young days, I would be able to run with full combat gear and weapons and helmet 12 miles with boots on in about 2 hours and 24 minutes for 12 hours. Now, for 12 miles. Now, you've hiked with me, I can't get anywhere near that with 27-pound pack, but now in my 50s. But so my introduction to hiking was probably as a soldier. Doesn't classify as hiking. Hiking for fun last year. Last year I did 90 miles on the Appalachian Trail. I did the state of Maryland, which was really fun and relatively mild. And then did some hiking in New Jersey and Pennsylvania because I live in New Jersey, so it was easy to do that in the autumn. And then I got hooked. The 90 miles I did last year is what actually hooked me on long distance hiking, and I went and got all the necessary gear, and I put together Heart Hike, which is as you know, the campaign or the hike for 2017 to raise funds and awareness for the Ironheart Foundation. So that's how I got into long distance hiking.
Absolutely, and first and foremost, I want to thank you for your service. It's always an honor to me to get to talk to someone that served and done the things necessary for me to have the freedoms that I have today, including speaking right now. So thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem. And you certainly are one of the people who is actually executing to the fullest his freedom of speech right. as noted in all of your YouTube channels. There's a lot of freedom of speech going on there. And I like it.
have you got a chance to check them out? Have you got a chance
Yeah.
to see some of my
I
stuff?
haven't subscribed. I haven't subscribed, but pretty much every time you post something controversial on Facebook, I'll go check out the video, and I always get a kick out of it. See, a lot of people don't know this, but you and I guess we hiked about 140 miles together, starting at Uncle Johnny's and Nolichucky Hospital
Yeah.
on the Nolichucky River. And what's funny about our relationship is that when I met you, I thought I was the most extroverted, most vociferous, most blabbermouthed person on the trail, and then I met you, and totally put me in the kindergarten realm with. And then now that I'm off the trail and I watch what you do, you talk for a living, so you have multiple channels, multiple opinions, in multiple realms, and I thought, man, that's exactly the guy I hiked with, and
Yeah.
and now it all makes sense. But on the trail, I thought to myself, man, I don't know if you remember, but there were times where I would be behind you, and whatever other hikers happened to be our guests that day during our tramily period, our trail family period, and I would just listen to the banter for hours from the back. Yeah. So Anyway, so yeah, I enjoy your execution of your freedom of speech right, and it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to serve to give you that right.
Absolutely, and it was funny because when we first met, Mr. Kolker here, he was sitting at the picnic table at Uncle Johnny's. I sat down with him. He told me about his heart issues, and I was telling him about my past, and he was very inquisitive about my appearance, and I don't think he expected to meet the teardrop that he met. I would like to ask you about that. Were you shocked to later find out I was a conservative and was a completely different person than I appear to be?
Of course, but I will tell you something that so if you've not done any hiking, if you've not hiked the AT, one of the things that the AT does for people is it kind of erases your previous notions and your previous concepts about people. So I've met CEOs on the Appalachian Trail, and I've met homeless 23-year-old dudes on the Appalachian Trail, and we all shared dinner together out of our cookhouse.
You didn't eat their mice, did you? As long as you didn't eat their mice, you're okay.
That's a different story altogether. But so basically, the trail becomes this grand equalizer of human existence. I'm not saying it's socialist. I'm not saying it's communist. What I'm saying is it becomes a place where your preconceived notions about people are given. They're shaken up. They're given a rattle. And so, of course, when I met you, immediately I noticed the prison tattoo and on your eye there, and I also noticed the gang tattoos. And if I'd have met you in New Jersey, I probably would have steered clear of you, quite frankly. But I met you at Uncle Johnny's Nolichucky Hospital at a picnic table, and I was doing my hike and you were doing your hike, and I was curious about, and I don't remember this, but you appeared a little bit stuck at the time, and I was also struggling because it was really hot, and I was concerned about dehydration, and I had a plan to get out of Uncle Johnny's. And to move forward and move into the heat. And I thought that maybe we should hike together. And then we went to dinner that night to have Mexican food, and we started to connect. And then the truth is, the guy that I ended up knowing now and the guy that I first met, because we were at Uncle Johnny's, because we were on the trail, because the trail has a tendency to kind of cleanse your mind and give you an open mind about giving other people the benefit of the doubt. I think that we hit it off well. We discovered that we're both conservatives, that we both believe in being law-abiding, and that we both believe in being patriots. And many of these things that most people would have never guessed that you and I would have ever hit it off if we had been standing in a street corner in Chicago or New York City or whatever. You would have never guessed that we would hit it off the way we did. So to your point, I learned a lesson from that. That was a very valuable life lesson for me. And yeah, you can still learn life lessons at 55. I'm here to let you know that. So, and it was, don't always judge a book by its cover. And that always sounds good, but it's a lot more difficult to actually put that into action, right?
Right.
And so, so that meeting was one of the highlights of my time on the trail, was meeting you and hiking with you. How many miles did we hike together? About 130, something like that?
About 100. Well, we went from Irwin essentially to Damascus. Yeah.
However far that is. I don't have the guidebook in front of me.
Yeah, me either. No, I will say this: you're the only man I've ever done anything with in our underwears together. So,
Yeah, so look, I want to clarify that you're not going to get away with that, and I hope this part stays in the video. So it was in the 90s, the early 90s, in Fahrenheit, that is, and early 90s, Tennessee, July, 97-degree humidity, and we got rained on almost every morning, and so our clothes were not drying ever. And so I discovered the easiest way to dry our clothes was to take our shorts off and hike in our underwear, but our shorts dangle off the back of our pack. So we have some pretty funny videos where we're just hotter than dog shit. And there's an underwear video out there. And if I ever run for political office, I'll have to send you some kickback money to have you never put that back out on the web.
And I will accept it.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
Because currently that video's in the intro. It's one of the videos that's in the intro to this video.
Yeah, nice, great, yeah. But they were ex officio underwear, so they're actually, they kind of look like shorts, only they're a little bit tight in certain areas. And I remember scaring some women in their 60s. I remember women coming around the corner and seeing both of us standing there in their underwear and having to avert their eyes out of fear, and walk by us at a fast pace as we greeted them politely in our underwear. So I do remember that. But,
absolutely. Well, to move on, what got you into hiking? What made you say, I want to walk for fun?
Well, so I'll tell you why I got into hiking, and I'm going to correct you on walking for fun. So, as you know, the Appalachian Trail, or any long distance hiking, especially on the Appalachian Trail, does not necessarily categorize itself as fun. It's rewarding with moments of fun, like hiking in your underwear and scaring women in their 60s. But why I got into it. So in 2011, I was a very different guy. I was very heavy. I weighed probably about 50 pounds more than I do right now, if not 60. And I smoked cigarettes for 31 years, and I was a real angry guy all the time. I ended up raising kids all by myself. Ended up being a parenting alone father, not a single father. Single father gets their kid on the weekends. I raised two children all by myself from the ages of 5 and 7. And because their mother walked away from everybody and stayed away from everybody. So that was very stressful. And I was a soldier for 10 years. I picked up a lot of bad habits: smoking, drinking, eating wrong, never went to the doctors for almost a decade. And so finally at 49, it all caught up with me, and I dropped dead of a sudden cardiac arrest. And so I was given my life back after flatlining twice at the scene, twice in the ambulance, twice in the emergency room, and slipping into a coma just before Christmas, right around this time of year, 2011. And my family was called to the hospital to say goodbye to me. And I had a vision during my coma. My father came to me and told me that I needed to go back and that I needed to do some good things with my life, and people still needed me. He actually said great things, not good things. So I came out of the coma. I was rushed into surgery, and they placed 2 metal stents in my heart, in my major arteries, and then said, "You're extremely lucky, blessed, as a matter of fact. There's no damage to your heart. There's no damage to your brain," although my wife might have a tendency to disagree with that. And what happened, in fact, was I was sent home and told, "You have the most unhealthy heart and unhealthy lungs that we've seen in years, and that you've got some decisions to make." And so I went home and made those decisions. And those decisions were that I was going to eat right, that I was going to never get into the high 200s, close to 300 pounds, that I was going to exercise, 3 to 6 times a week, and that I was going to just really appreciate and respect and cherish the second chance that I've been given to have my life back. So it was a slow recovery. I didn't have health insurance at the time. I was between contracting and getting a W-2 position with the company, and it was that little period of time before your COBRA goes south and you pick up real health insurance, and could have happened at the worst time. And so as a result, I had no rehab or I wasn't sent to a facility to go get rehabbed. I was just sent home. And so I started searching for rehab options myself, and I found the Ironheart Foundation, which is a Seattle-based foundation that specializes in helping people who have had cardiac events whether or not it's sudden cardiac arrest or heart attack or a valve problem or whatever your cardiac event is. And these people weren't sitting on their butts recovering. They weren't being careful. They weren't taking their meds and resting. These people were running 5Ks. They were running half marathons. They were doing triathlons. They were doing long distance open water swims. They were kayaking. And so I joined that organization in 2012, and I started doing triathlons. I did my first triathlon 9 months after my cardiac arrest, in which I swam 800, half a mile and 10-mile bike ride and a 5K run in under 2 hours. And I've done 14 of those. And then last year I said, I think I really would like the solitude of hiking, like the relaxation and solitude of hiking. And I started hiking last year. And then I had the big idea last winter that I would try to do as much of the trail as I could in 2017 and actually turn it into an attempt to officially raise awareness and funds for the Ironheart Foundation because of the great work they've done in a lot of people's lives. I wanted to kind of give back. And if it hadn't been for them, I might not have made the choices I made. I was trying to make those choices, but there was no vehicle for me to kind of connect with to make those choices. And so I wanted to give back, and I did. I raised almost $10,000 for them, and I probably handed out my business card, my Ironheart Foundation business card, and told the Ironheart story, as you know, probably thousands of times, at least over 1,000 times, at least one time per mile. And as you know, I surpassed 1,000 trail miles this year. So overall, I mean, it's been a very I think that part of the hike was very successful for me. And the Ironheart Foundation, yeah.
Absolutely. I actually thought I lost you in the Highlands because you were busy communicating and talking. I thought I lost you in the Roan Highlands, but without a doubt, it was great cause you're going for right now. Wanted to get more into that a little bit later. Now this year you hiked 1,000 miles. Is that correct? Is that an accurate number?
Well, so the math is a little convoluted. And the way that it works, and everyone knows where they hiked and where they didn't hike if they haven't finished yet. And so when you add up, first of all, let's just talk about the through hike aspiration, and then I'll talk about mileage. I had through hike aspirations like everybody. I got on the trail, had no idea how long I would go. I was prepared to stay out there for 7 months. And by week 2, I had some 4-mile days. I had already by week 2, I had some 000 days. I was hurting. I was tired. I thought, what did I get myself into? And so I made a decision by the second week that I would hike as long as I could as far as I could, as long as I could, until it made sense and without injuring myself. And that ended up being, so remember, I brought 90 miles to the trail, 41 miles in Merritt, and 49 miles between the Mohican Outdoor Center in New Jersey and to Pennsylvania. And those were my 2 practice hikes where I shook down my gear and decided what I would bring and not bring. And so when I decided in week 2 that it wasn't a through hike anymore, it was a complete the trail hike, I brought those 90 miles into the mathematical equation. So then I hiked to, I finished up in Damascus with you, which is 469 point something miles, plus the 90. And then it was really hot. It was so hot, in fact, that I went up to Maine and I started making my way south after summiting Katahdin through the 100-mile wilderness. I got a call from my wife when I was at Joe Mary Road, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean when I'm hiking? What do you mean what am I doing?" She said, "Well, are you going to what's your goal?" I said, "About 1,000 miles." She said, "You're going to make that in southern Maine and New Hampshire? Those are really hard miles, right?" I said, "Yeah, they're really hard miles." So why don't you go back to Damascus? I mean, she said, I'm not a hiker, but maybe you should go back to Damascus. It's cooling down and finish the south, or as much as the south. To which I told her, you're so smart about everything except your choice in men. And
I'm shaking my head right now, right?
Well, she's really smart. Listen, she's really smart about everything except for her choice in men. So I got on the bus. I went down to Damascus, and I went and stayed at Woodchuck's with Chuck there, and Chuck was very kind to us. That's where you and I parted ways in the early in the summer. And I got back on and I walked from Damascus almost all the way to Harper's Ferry. And so there was a portion of the trail where there were 35 miles without water. I don't know if you know this, if you were out there on the trail this year, and you were out there in September, there were some serious droughts in southern and central Virginia. And so I had a decision to make, and I pulled over at about, I'm thinking it was right around McAfee Knob, and I sat there and I said, I've got some stretches that are 35 miles without a road crossing and without water. And I don't know if you know this, but one of the biggest causes of cardiac arrest, even amongst healthy people, is dehydration.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, 35 miles without water, and remember, I'm averaging 8 to 14 miles a day. That's 3 days of water that I would have to carry. And that, with that heat, and it was still hot, that's almost 3 liters a day. That's 9 liters of water times 2.2 pounds. That's almost 20 pounds of water. I just decided that probably wasn't a good idea for me. And so that's 150 miles between, in that drought impacted area between Catawba and Waynesboro. And so I needed, so I did my math. All in, I was at 840. I needed 160 to finish my 1,000. So I took a look at the map, I took a look at AWOL, I took a look at Gut Hook, and I went, wait a minute. From the beginning of the Shenandoahs all the way to Harper's Ferry is over 160. It's about 167. I'm going to do that. And so that's what I did. I skipped all that drought area, and I went up to Waynesboro, and I put back on, and I hiked up to Harper's Ferry. And at the end of the day, I ended up with 1,033 miles this year, trail miles. Now I have to go back and finish that 150, and that'll be something I'm going to do in April of this year. And then the south will be a tidy little cleaned up area. And then I'm going to owe the trail from Penmar to Joe Mary Road in the 100-mile wilderness. And I may redo the Pennsylvania, New Jersey spot just so there's continuity. I don't want any more break. It's so easy to break up the trail. That's one of the hardest things, is that continuity aspect, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. Now let me ask you, man. You've done. I mean, that's a hell of a year. What was your favorite hiking moment in your entire hiking career, or just even this year? What's your favorite hiking moment?
Wow. So that, man, there's so many of them, and they're all top tier. Can I have two?
Yes.
Okay, so one of my favorite moments hiking was the day that you and I actually slack packed in the Tennessee Turnpike. So if you don't know what the Tennessee Turnpike is, it's the end of Tennessee coming into Damascus.
Yeah.
And we were flying. We were absolutely flying. We were slack packing that day. I remember that. And we were flying. And if you don't know what slack packing is, it means that one of the hostel owners or a shuttle driver had maybe over half our gear. In my case, over half my gear. In your case, almost everything, and all you had was a bottle of water and a candy bar, because that's the way that you roll. But I think that was my biggest day until I came back to the trail after Maine. I think we did like 13.7 that day.
16.
Now, for most people, that's a mediocre day. For you, that's a mediocre day. For me,
it was actually 16 miles that day.
Was it 15.7 or something like that? Yeah. So for me, that was huge, coming from with my medical background and the fact that I had died once and so that day was a big day for me, and it felt really good to make it to Damascus, and I was going to do my flip flop and go up to Maine. So that was one of my favorite days. And my second favorite day was the day that I had in the Shenandoahs. And in the Shenandoahs, on about the third day, I met a lot. So if you haven't hiked in the Shenandoahs on the Appalachian Trail, I highly recommend it. The Shenandoahs are kind of like that fantasy that you've had about the AT, if you've never been on the AT, about how you think it might look. It's pristine. It's well graded. It's clean. There are friendly people everywhere. There are lodges where you can stay. There are campgrounds with water and bathroom facilities. That's what you hope the rest of the AT looks like, but it doesn't. But that was a spectacular 105 miles. And here's my second favorite moment on the Appalachian Trail. One morning I was hiking and I met some older people. They must have been in their late 60s. And, they were gray-haired and they had LL Bean gear on. And I came by them with beat up old stuff and smelling pretty horrible. And we stopped, and I did what I always do. I told them my story because they always say, "Hey, how far have you come?" I said, "Oh, 900 and something." And they said, "Wow. So why is your trail name Ironheart?" I tell them, "Well, it's because I have metal parts in my heart." The usual story that I tell people, right? And so we met, we fist bumped, we took some selfies. They enjoyed meeting me. I enjoyed meeting them. And then I overnighted in the park, and the next morning I got up and I was coming up on a lodge. And every time you come up on a lodge, a waypoint in the Shenandoahs, it means hot chocolate and a hot sandwich and a warm cafeteria. So I ducked in. I was about to duck in and do that, and they were backing out in their car, ready to go home. And they pulled over and they said, "Hey, Ironheart, we're so glad we saw you again." And this is what makes this my favorite time, my second favorite time. I guess the guy's name was Bill, and he was tearing up, and he had something he needed to tell me. He was all teary-eyed, and he said, "Yesterday when we met you, we thought that we had met an angel." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "I'm far from an angel." He said, "Well," and then his wife chimed in, "See, Bill here has been diagnosed with early Parkinson's disease, and he's got a big fight coming up ahead of him, and a fight which everyone loses. Everyone that gets Parkinson's disease loses that fight, right?" And he looked me right in the eye and he said, "I was really feeling sorry for myself until I met you. And because I met you yesterday, I'm ready for my fight now." And he started crying, his wife started crying, and I started to tear up, and I said, "Yeah, man." I said, "You got a big fight ahead of you, but you can do it." And he says, "When I met you," he says, "because you bounced back from what happened to you, you were courageous. It encouraged me to be courageous, and I'm ready for my fight." And I thought that embodied exactly what second chances are all about. And this guy's not going to have a second chance, right?
Yeah.
But he's embraced his fight, and he's ready for his fight, and he's not feeling sorry for himself. And he's gonna zap the most out of every day that he can get until he starts this fight, until he's deep into Parkinson's disease. So that's the second most spectacular day, and it was completely based on giving somebody else the courage and the wherewithal to fight, and whatever their fight is. Everyone's fighting their own fight out here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's an amazing story. Let me ask you though, what is your favorite area? I mean, I know I've hiked with you some, but what's your favorite area on the Appalachian Trail?
So I have two favorite spots. I like the Smokies a lot. I like the Smokies because they're hard because you're still kind of new, and they're rugged, and you're kind of remote. There's a lot of people, we meet a lot of people, but it's kind of remote because, like if you needed to get off the trail, they would have to rescue you using horses, right? So I kind of like that. So I would say that my first favorite place is the Smokies, especially around Clingman's Dome, where it becomes a pure alpine forest.
Right.
I like that first, and then second, I like the Shenandoahs. The Shenandoahs were amazing, and then the little bit I hiked in Maine, I would say that my third favorite part is Maine. At least the 56 miles of the 100-mile wilderness I went through.
Excellent. Now, other than losing to me in a swimming race, because we all know that you hold the loss.
It's funny that you would bring that up because you remember it that I lost in a race, but I remember you didn't even get wet.
No,
that's what I remember.
But I recall you forfeiting when it was time to go because it wasn't a safe enough area for you. So that counts as a loss, sir. But anyways,
you didn't get wet. That's what I remember.
That's true. That's true. Other than that, being a horrible moment for you, what was your worst hiking moment, would you say, throughout all this? What was the time that made you want to say, screw this, I'm going to quit?
Yeah, so I never felt like quitting, not once. But there were times where there were a couple of really demoralizing times. And so one of them was, everyone's heard the hike your own hike mantra, and I don't really believe in it. I actually believe in hashtag all hikes matter. But
yes, sir.
Yeah, but here's the thing. So I had a hike your own hike moment early on, and it was probably my most difficult day. As you know, hiking alone has its merit, but hiking alone can suck. It can be, you have to do all your chores by yourself. You overnight by yourself often. There's a whole what the hell was that noise shit that goes on when you're all by yourself. And I'm not going to say I'm afraid to sleep alone with where I'm a 9-hour walk from any civilization, but quite frankly, I'm afraid to sleep alone when there's a 9-hour walk to civilization sometimes. And so I didn't like being alone, and especially in the early days. You get more used to it. So when I was in Maine, I overnighted every night alone, and I actually enjoyed it. I cherished it because I had matured as a hiker, and I wasn't afraid of those noises. I just slept right through everything, right?
You're telling me you didn't make your hiking partner sleep with a shovel?
Well, yeah, I have. And exactly why I like hiking with other people is because you get to hand the shovel to the younger guy in the shelter and go, I'm going to hang the food, you're going to fight off the bears. And that works out really well. But listen, so here's the worst moment ever. And the worst moment was I had a hiking partner that was actually part of our family for a while. We'll just call her Angelina Jolie. And I was hiking along with her, and we had lost Doc. Doc got off the trail. And I was all alone, and I thought, I really want to stay with somebody on the trail. And she decided to grow wings, and she was going to do a 14-mile day. And at that time, I was averaging 7-mile days. And it was pretty early, and it was still, I think it was just after getting out of Georgia. And it was raining, and it was wet, and it was miserable. And she shot for 14 miles and just lost me. And when I got to 7 miles that day, I still had another 7 miles. Most of it was uphill. And I just couldn't go anymore. And I decided, you know what? I can't go anymore. And I can't chase somebody else. I can't stay with somebody because they want to go faster and further. I need to do it at my own pace. And that was a really rough day for me because that's when I realized I'm going to be hiking alone for a bit. Yeah. And I hiked quite alone from that point until I met you, actually. And I mastered it. I got good at hiking alone. But the first day when I realized I'm not going to have any hiking partners, and I can't go as fast as other people, at least not yet, or as far as other people, at least not yet. Yeah. And that was a hard day for me. And it rained, and I was offered a ride down the mountain by a drunk local and his girlfriend, and I decided not to take that ride because they were drunk. And so I didn't see anybody else that night, so I just hunkered down in the rain and tented on the side of the trail and was just all kinds of miserable. And but once I got, once I digested the fact that, okay, you're up by yourself now, it became easier and easier after that. But to be alone. The trail never got easy. The trail's never easy, but being alone got easier.
Absolutely. Now, our next question is, what is the worst area in your, let me give you an example. Like for me, Hot Springs to Irwin is the absolute worst area I've hiked on the Appalachian Trail. It was the least used. Everything sucked. I hated it. What about yourself? What is the worst section you hiked on the trail?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's interesting. So that is a great question. I also did not like that area very much, and it was really hot.
Yeah.
Really hot.
I had to get rescued.
Really? Yes, I do remember your rescue. I do. I still don't understand your rescue because I have a lot of respect for your hiking sophistication, but I don't understand how you let yourself get in that position. But we talked about that at one time. And but the worst part, that's interesting. So there's a part. Well, so that part really sucked, and I would say that the part that I skipped is probably the worst part, and I knew it was going to be the worst part. Nondescript, boring, Virginia, nothing to see here, no water, stories from southbounders telling me muddy puddles of water.
You can't use areas you didn't hike. No, you got to give me...
But here's the thing, so here's what I'm saying. The part I didn't like was the part I skipped. And I skipped it because I knew I wasn't going to like it. So I have to go back and do it. The parts that I actually did, so the parts that I actually did, what didn't I like? I would say the last 20 miles, I would say from Standing Bear to Max Patch kind of sucked for me.
That thing was that was a hell of a climb out of Standing Bear. You're right.
And it sucked, and you had just come out of the Smokies, and you felt really accomplished. And then you got the Standing Bear, which I don't know what your Standing Bear experience was, but mine was a real downer. Incidentally, the guy that ran the Clark, he just passed away a few days ago. May God rest his soul.
Man.
But Clark was there, and I got to overnight with Clark, and the whole Standing Bear experience was really depressing. And then hiking out of Standing Bear to Max Patch was just unbelievably boring and difficult, and was not the Smokies anymore. And until you got to Max Patch, and then you got to Max Patch, and everything started to get really cool again, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that section between Standing Bear and Max Patch kind of sucked for me.
Without a shadow of a doubt. I definitely. Let me ask you this. You're a hostile guy. I'm a hostile guy. Tell me your best.
26 hostels. So if you look at, I ran these numbers. It started with 2,300,000 and blah 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 thousand steps, all the way down to 0 regrets. And I posted that on Facebook. And in there, one of the numbers is the number 26, and 26 was the number of hostels I stayed in. And I stayed almost. I mean, whenever there was you know my philosophy, right? A bunk bed over a shelter over a tent, and a hotel over a bunk bed. If it's prudent, if it's reasonably priced, and you really need to sleep all day, which sometimes, as you know, sometimes sleeping all day is good medicine when you're hiking, doing a lot of hiking.
Absolutely. The question I attempted to get out about 5 minutes ago was, what is your favorite?
This would happen all the time. I would constantly interrupt you. So you got 2 extra.
No, you're all good, man. What was your favorite hostel?
I think my friendliest stay was at Woodchucks.
I agree with that. I agree with that myself.
Yeah, so Woodchucks was the end of my southern adventure, and was the restarting of my push north. And Chuck was a perfect gentleman. He was a great guy. I really enjoyed him.
He was a conservative. That happens.
Yes, I enjoyed his demeanor. I enjoyed the service he's provided. It wasn't the most luxurious hostel. It wasn't even the best hostel. It was just the friendliest hostel.
I can agree with that. Let me ask you, what's your favorite trail town?
Interesting. So Damascus was fun. I would say Hot Springs. Hot Springs is just such a hiker town. It really is.
I can barely remember it.
It's highly dysfunctional, right? Hot Springs. It's all about hikers, but I like Damascus. I like Damascus quite a bit. I would never vacation in any of those towns we walked through. I thought many of them were kind of, you know, they were sleepy little hiker towns with not a whole lot going on other than hikers. And when you're on the trail, they seemed amazing. But would I ever go vacation in Hot Springs? No.
No, I feel the same exact way. You got a worse hostel, one that you say, I'm never going back to that piece of shit again.
Yeah, so let's think about that. So the hostel in Gooder Grove was really bad. That's in Franklin. It's so bad, in fact, that I overnighted with a work-for-stay felon. Wanted by the Vermont State Police. Not anything wrong with a felon, don't get me wrong. I actually admire some felons. But this guy was wanted by the Vermont State Police, and he was telling a bullshit story about what he was doing on the trail. And Gooder's Grove Hostel is just full of people hiding from things, and stuck hikers, and people masquerading as hikers, and the drugs.
You say masquerading or masturbating?
Yeah, I said masquerading.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So masquerading as hikers. And, nothing against Zen, the guy that runs the place, but there's just a complete lack of rules. There's 0 rules there. I was shocked. It didn't take ID from anybody. You didn't have to sign in. I mean, you could whatever your game was, you could play it there, and no one would question it. So I didn't feel comfortable there. It was a little too bohemian for me, right?
Yeah. No, I understand. And what's your worst?
Did you stay at Gooders Grove?
Huh?
Did you stay at Gooders Grove in Franklin?
I've been there before. I was there before. I was there right after it opened. Like, I remember the day it opened. I've met Colin. Me and Colin do not agree on politics. So we used to be Facebook friends until I had to delete the motherfucker. But
is that Colin Zen?
I don't know if they're the same person or not. I keep hearing the Zen name, but Colin is the owner of the thing. Colin Gooder is, I don't know if it's the same person or not, but I know Colin's extremely liberal, and so
Yeah. So I did not. I didn't enjoy my stay there. That was a place I couldn't wait to leave.
Yeah. Well, like, as I was saying, no, Colin just with him. Did you just put me on hold, motherfucker? All right, good to see you back. No, just in general, Facebook beef led to some bullshit. Anyways, worst town, the town that you said fuck it, I'm not going back.
Helen, Georgia. Helen, Georgia. Do you still hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Helen, Georgia was such a strange place. The whole place is made up to look like somewhere in like Germany, and it just was the strangest place. And the hotel I stayed in a motel there. It was horrible. Just Helen was just really sucked.
It reminded me of one of them little snow globe towns. You know what I mean? It was I love the way it looked. So did you have a bad experience when you was there, or you just don't like that sort of thing?
It was just weird. It seemed real phony, and yeah, I had a bad experience there. They put us in a hiker room inside air quotes, which meant the air conditioner didn't work and it smelled really bad, and it was just a miserable time. And I just felt like hikers weren't really respected in Helen at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Were you at the Hellendorf?
I think that was the name of the joint. Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah.
It was horrible. Yeah, it was a bad experience.
So let me ask you, this was one of your first real long distance hike. What was your scariest moment? The moment that made you almost crap yourself? Just curious if you have one of those.
Yeah, I almost got struck by lightning on my first day in the Smokies. I mean, literally from like where you sit on the sofa in your house to the front door, lightning struck, and it struck, and you could feel the heat off of the lightning, and a tree shattered and rolled down the side of a mountain, and I felt the heat from the lightning, and I was screaming, and my hiking partner came up and he wanted to hear what I was screaming, and I was screaming, "I'm alive!" I was so happy to be alive and not be struck by lightning on my first day in the Smokies. But that was the most physically scary moment of the whole hike, was the lightning strike right near us, and so it was pretty impressive, actually.
Absolutely. Now, you met a lot of people that you'd never met before, obviously, on this trail. What memorable people stand out in your mind from this hike?
Well, so you're on that list. So I had a couple of hiking partners throughout my time. Doc, who's a Navy veteran, we hiked from top of Georgia all the way through the end of the Smokies together. That he was a memorable guy. Enjoyed his time. I hiked with a lady who was 72 years old in Maine. Her name was Tiptoe. She was pretty memorable as well. And there's just so many people, man. So many awesome people that I met along the way. I've hiked with some of them, and was a trampoline with a couple of others. And I couldn't even begin to list them all. And as a matter of fact, as you mentioned it right now, I'm trying to put together a list of all the people that had an impact on my hike, a positive impact on my hike. And I'm going to be sending out thank you cards. But I don't know if you remember this, but I carried this flag, right? So this is the flag that kind of has the logo of the organization that I was hiking for. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
But these are all signatures, kind of like you would have someone sign your cast or your yearbook, right?
Right.
And basically, these are the signatures of the people who, at the time, I remembered to ask them to sign this flag because they had a positive impact on my ability to continue hiking.
Yeah.
You did sign it, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm on there somewhere.
I think you're in there. I think there's the F words on here somewhere. That was probably yours,
yeah,
right?
More than likely. Let me ask you, something I always ask everybody. Well, are you done with your memorable people? Do you have more?
Man, I don't. It's funny, I could talk about everybody for a couple hours, but I don't want to sell anybody short. So
right, no,
Yeah, I mean, there's so many awesome people, and there were a couple people that like I heard you say it before, like 99% of the people you meet on the trail are just great. There's that 1%. I would say that out of every 100 people you meet on the trail, 99% of them are great, which is a much higher indice than here in the real world, right? I would say that only like 10 people out of 100 people in the real world are actually great, right?
Yeah. Do you have anyone that negatively stuck out in your mind? I just thought of that. I'm going to add that to my new questions for the hikers.
Yeah. I met some characters that I just found over the top, off the chart weird. Like that one kid called Caveman who was actually hunting for mice and snakes and eating them. And it was the real deal. He wasn't making that shit up. He had the pelt of mice and snakes sewn to his shorts. So you do meet some weird people, like people I would never, ever even take to McDonald's, right?
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
This guy was off the charts odd. You were there the day that I met him.
Hey, no, you gave me $8 and I was mad about it. I said, what the fuck you get? Excuse me.
No, the only reason I gave them a little bit of money was because I was a trail dad to this cat he was hiking with whose name was Apples.
Yeah.
And I first met Apples because he kept me awake shivering in the shelter in the Smokies because dude was sleeping with a cotton sheet from a bed.
Jesus.
And I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm freezing. I said, well, yeah, duh. But why are you sleeping with a sheet? Oh, my friend is going to get me a sleeping bag in Gatlinburg. I said, that's at least 3 days from here.
Right.
And so Doc and I ended up gifting this kid a Mylar blanket. And he was able to stay warm enough to not die in the Smokies, even though it was June. The Smokies were in the high 30s at night in some of those high elevations.
Yeah.
So he was there. You saw me meet him, and he's always been. Every time I see him, he's with a different group of hippie kids. And you don't remember this. The very first words out of their mouth, they're starving, right? They're eating mice and snakes, and the very first words out of their mouth were, "You guys have any weed?"
Yeah.
Not do you have any food? Do you have any weed? And so I did feel bad for him. So I gave him $8 and said, you got to buy some food.
Yeah.
And they probably ended up buying weed. So I probably contributed to the delinquency of a hippie, right?
Yeah,
but
unfortunately. And as I did a whole video on these damn dope fiends out there, but it is what it is. Something I want to ask, and I'm starting to have everybody do this, right? Outside of the hiking route, give us one fact about John Kolker that we may not know that would surprise us.
Interesting.
This is what I do, sir. I'm a journalist.
That would surprise you. Huh. That's interesting. Here's one. When I was a young man, until I was about 25, I was liberal. And the reason I'm no longer a liberal is I know how to read.
Things such as the Constitution, things such as...
Well, no. So when I was a young man, I was fascinated with books by Che Guevara, or about Che Guevara, about Fidel Castro.
Sure.
Books written by Eldridge Cleaver, books written about and by Malcolm X, and I was really drawn to people who I thought were revolutionary.
Right.
And I wasn't just your run-of-the-mill liberal. I was a liberal that was consuming tons and tons of literature and documentation about people that are glorified as heroes in the liberal sectors. And the more I read and the more facts I discovered, the more I realized that the whole movement is based on overly romanticized bullshit. And so when people talk to me about being conservative...
Hold on, man. You froze up. Up. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We had a little bit of technical difficulties here, but we are back. And we were working on, I don't remember what question we were working on, but I believe our good friend John here has has something else he thought of during our absence. I had a turkey sandwich. I got a chance to take a shit and everything, man. So I enjoyed the break. But go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Good old TMI. My favorite thing about running with you is the extreme Olympic caliber level of TMI.
Well, dude, we've been in our underwear together and pooped in.
I noticed. I noticed you mentioned that quite a bit. Like it's a real fond memory for you. But no, I was.
Are you accusing me of being a liberal, sir?
Okay. So anyway, so while we were away, I want to restate the worst hostel experience I had. It was not Gooder Grove. It was at this place called Lick Skillet. So Lick Skillet is in Central Virginia, and it's a converted church, and should be a condemned church. But he has like 15 beds, and a dog that roams around and jumps on all the beds. And the experience I had was astonishing. So the kid picks me up that owns the hostel, and I'm not going to mention his name, but it's Mondo. And Mondo picks me up, and the very first thing he does is he's very polite, very friendly, and he tells me that it's donation based, and because he wants to give testimony. So he's a born again Christian, and tells me that he read the Bible 4 times, and that he used to be a gangbanger, and that he got arrested and did jail time for selling drugs because, and this is a direct quote, because he believed the lyrics of most rap music. So he's a young white guy who believed the lyrics of most rap music and became a gangbanger. That's according to him. I'm not sure where, but anyway, he's.
What was the lyrics supposed to motivate? What was the believable? I'm confused by that because I still listen to hip hop today, and I don't. It doesn't make me want to go commit crime.
Right. So anyway, so the kid was a piece of work. Actually, it was a piece of artwork, and so he picks us up off the trail. At this, I'm hiking with a guy named Dudley Do-Right, who was one of the other memorable people from my trail experience. And he picks us up and he shakes our hand and he's going to drive us to the hostel. And by the way, so here's this story is I got kicked out of this hostel. Now you know me, and you know that I'm the last guy that anyone would ever kick out of any establishment, right? So this is a great story. So I want to bore you with this for a second.
I've almost kicked you out of this interview about 4 times, just so you know.
got out of the car. I got in the car. He shakes my hand, says, "Nice to meet you." And then we're driving along back to the hostel, and there's this binging on the front dash. Ding, 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 ding. He says, "Excuse me." And he leans over and he grabs this device off the dash and he goes, and he starts blowing in this device. And I'm like, what is that? He says, "Oh, this is my DUI device." And that's the camera. And so they take a video of me blowing into the device, and it's the only way I'm allowed to drive my car after nearly killing somebody in a head-on collision in which I was so drunk I passed out. So instantly, everything tightens up now. You know, my sphincter tightens up. I'm just so nervous driving with this guy. So we get to the hostel, finally.
What was your sphincter doing loose prior to them?
I have a pretty loose sphincter on the trail. That's called the shit you do in the woods. And so since we're talking about it, do you ever notice that when you do town visits and you get back in the woods, you have to shit twice, not once, but twice from all the food that you ate? Anyway, so back to the story. So this guy, he was kind of strange. And, you know, it's nothing. There's a lot of strange people on the trail, so I didn't think very much of it. Until the next morning, we're working out some slack packing details. And this is where it gets really bad. I tell him I would like to have my gear stored behind the counter in your hostel or in your vehicle because of the open nature of your hostel here at Lick Skillet. Anybody can walk in here while you're running errands and, quite frankly, steal my expensive stuff. I had a pretty expensive pack or a pretty expensive tent, a pretty expensive sleeping bag. And I can afford those things because I don't have a mistress and because I'm hardworking. So he took offense to that and he said, "Nobody's going to steal your stuff. That's not the kind of place I run here." And I said, "Well, it's not your place and it's not you. It's the people that will come into your place when you're running errands." So I find that offensive. I said, I don't mean it to be offensive. I just, it's my stuff, and everything I have, I need, and everything I need, I have. And then he said, walked over to the wall, and he read a Bible verse off the wall that said something about worldly possessions and how I was too concerned about worldly possessions. And if I'm a Christian, I shouldn't be concerned about worldly possessions. And I said, huh, that's one interpretation of Christianity. Here's my interpretation of Christianity. I don't leave my shit laying around, so I don't tempt any motherfuckers to steal it. And for me, that's Christian to not tempt people to steal my shit. And so I'm looking out for my fellow man by not tempting them to cause them to sin. And he said, you have a very twisted understanding of Christianity. And I said, yeah, whatever, dude. Can I store my stuff behind the counter when I'm slack packing or not? Meanwhile, he's got a new girlfriend who sleeps right in the same bed with him, in the same hostel with all of us, in the open area. And she had been asking him to do all this family stuff the next day, and he had some conflicts with the family stuff and with us slack packing. So there's a lot going on there, but mostly there was my twisted view of Christianity because I wanted to safeguard my shit from being stolen, and his thinking that was a misinterpretation of Christianity. So we talked about religion, and we talked about religion because he wanted to quote the Bible about why I shouldn't be concerned about my shit while I'm in slack packing. So long story short, he goes outside, there's a little discussion with his girlfriend. He comes back in and he looks me right in the eye and he says, you, my hiking partner, have to pack up and head on out. And so I said, bro, are you kicking me out of your hostel? He goes, yes, you will have to leave immediately. And I said, wow. So I was like, that's some pretty salty stuff. I got some trail cred now. I got kicked out of a hostel.
You're a thug.
And yeah, I am. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I got kicked out of a hostel. So instantly my trail cred just went through the roof.
Even I've never been kicked out of a hostel, my friend.
Yes. And you, from just the looks of you, unless you actually had a conversation with you, you look like the most likely guy to be kicked out of a hostel. But I don't. So I did get kicked out of a hostel. So that was my worst hostel experience. And I didn't post anything negative about him. I let my whole experience come and go, got off the trail, and did not light him up. But I would like to light him up in this interview. That is a hack place run by a kid who is not a professional, is not a good owner. The hostel itself should be condemned. It was highly unsafe. Parts of the roof are going to fall on somebody while they're sleeping. And for him to kick me out because I was concerned about my gear was just over the top ridiculous. So, yeah, I'm calling him out in this video. So I'm using your video to call him out. Don't stay at Lick Skillet. It's a hack place. You might have a great experience, or you might have a psychotic experience where it goes from a good experience to an awful experience within minutes, and you get kicked out. So now some controversy.
I love it. Lake Skillet is located in what city, what town, and what state?
So I'm gonna have to text that to you in a little bit, but so it's south of a place called Woods Hole Hostel.
Oh,
because that's where I ended up. Yeah, just south of there, which was a spectacular stay, by the way. Woods Hole was a great stay. Yeah. But Lick Skillet, run by a guy named Mondo, I can't remember.
I think you're saying the name of this place wrong, because you're talking about in Virginia, right?
Yeah, it's in Virginia. It's called Lick Skillet. I would never forget that name. It was such a weird name that it stuck with me. And okay. I'll send you the information. But look, I don't necessarily dislike the kid, but I really dislike the way that I was treated there. And I think other people should know that there's a chance that you'll get treated like that if you go there. So.
And his name is Mondo.
Mondo or Mongo or some shit like that. Yeah, something like that.
Sweet. Now that we're on to some controversial shit, let's get into it. Because now I want to ask you about something completely different. So for all of you Christian folks watching this channel, this may be the time to change the channel, because we're going to get into some serious shit. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're going to see it. Anyway, so, Kolker, I know you've seen the incident in Damascus with Craig Johnston, and how the owner of Hey Joe's treated him in that situation. I was curious, and off camera, I informed you of what Craig admitted to, and he admitted that he was there to buy drugs. Just curious on your entire take on that event.
Yeah, so I don't really have. So I have some generic opinions about what happened. I spent some time in Damascus. As you know, it was my finish line in the South, and then it was my restarting point. And what I do know about Damascus is there's plenty of places to buy drugs.
Yeah.
There are hostels that are specifically designed for the sale of drugs.
Are we talking about the Broken Fiddle?
Well, so you said it, I didn't, and then there are, I think there's only like 4 or 5 restaurants in town, and they all have funny names. Joe.
There's 3. They all have names that sound like each other. Hey Joe's, Hey Mo's, and No No's, or whatever the hell it's called.
Exactly. But everyone knows. Everyone just knows that. So when you come to Damascus has something for everybody in a way. So if you're a serious hiker and you're an older person and you don't necessarily enjoy using meth or smoking copious amounts of weed, you go and stay or getting drunk. So not all those things go together. Those are all different realms of substance use. But if you don't want to do any of that, you stay at Woodchuck's, right?
I agree.
And so, but if you want some of that, so if you want to drink, you could stay other places. But if you want to drink and do anything else under the sun that's illicit, you go to the Broken Fiddle, and then you can go get yourself some tacos at Hey Joe's and buy more drugs from there. Everyone just knows that. Now, I didn't see that with my own eyes. I'm not speaking as a visual testimony that I actually saw that, but that is the common knowledge in town. Everyone knows that. So if you're a hiker and you spend any time in Damascus, there are places that you can be straight-laced and go to bed at 8:30 and get a good night's sleep and slack pack the hell out of the trail the next day and have no drug experiences, no drunks, or people that are high or messed up ruining your night's sleep. And
worst case scenario is you bump into a fake Indian in a teepee.
That's a different story altogether, who might scalp you on the trail. So,
that's right.
But yeah, so I don't know much about that whole incident other than the fact that it is a known hotspot for drug activity. Everyone just knows it. And so I was not surprised at all when I heard all that nonsense about drugs and about, and look, even the anti-Semitic remarks. I mean, dude, I'm a Yankee, and I was called out multiple times for being a Yankee in the South. And most Southern people that I met were open and kind and kind of parts of the New South. But I did hear a lot of blatant, open, outrageous racism in the South. Outrageous. And being a white person, I guess other white people in the South who are openly racist are openly racist because they think since I'm white, I'm also racist, which is not the truth. And so some of the racist beliefs in the South were, to me, astonishing in 2017. So the fact that in Damascus there's drugs, and then there's a Southern guy, who is anti-Semitic, does not surprise me at all. Doesn't surprise me at all. I'm not shocked at all.
What I was going to ask you is why are you astonished by the fact that in 2017 that people still think that way? Just curious.
Well, because I guess the narrative is that so the narrative before 8 years of Obama was that we have evolved past that. And during the 8 years of Obama, the divisiveness and the dividing factors were stirred into our culture again, and it restarted. But I really thought that, and being a Yankee, I don't really understand the South that well, quite frankly, but I thought that many of those things were over, and I heard of the New South, places like Asheville, where you can see interracial couples and even same-sex, same-gender couples, and I thought the South had evolved. Well, at least evolved away from being closed-minded racists. And so I met a lot of racist people in the South. Astonishingly, I was amazed at the comfort in which they expressed their closed-minded views about people of other races, because they thought since I was white, I also didn't like black people, or I didn't like Jews, or whatever. And so, anyway, back to the original point. the fact that there's a anti-Semitic group of people in Damascus, and that somebody who is Jewish was treated unfairly, and that there may have been drugs involved in the scenario. None of that shit surprises me at all. At all. I'm not surprised about any of it. Now, the details about whether it's true, whether the Jewish hiker, who I understood is a triple crowner, was actually in there to buy drugs, I don't know any of that. And I'm not sure of any of that. I do know that Damascus needs to step up its game and not because they're messing it up, but because I'm a capitalist, right? And there is a gem of an opportunity in Damascus. Damascus has the Creeper Trail and lots of bicycle enthusiasts, lots of hikers, lots of families. It could be an awesome place for families to go and enjoy themselves, right, in the South. But you've got all this nonsense going on with unsafe restaurants that are selling drugs. You've got some openly anti-Semitic commentary coming from people in positions of authority. Why would you ever want to take your family to a place like that? Why would you want to even stay there for more than a night on your through hike? You wouldn't, right? And so for me, it's pure economics. It's pure capitalism. They're missing an opportunity to be a shining example and star of capitalistic success at that point in the South. Because of all this nonsense.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. But what I'd like to ask you is, since you had time out here on the trail, if minorities were thinking about coming out here and hiking, just curious, from your take, is this something that you feel is a regular thing? Just kind of, if I was a minority watching this video and I'm hearing this, I would say to myself, oh shit, man, AT may have a lot of racism in the South, or maybe I shouldn't go.
So that's a great question. So I think so my experience is, and I've seen non-Caucasian hikers, right? There's still not many of them out there. It is still predominantly a kind of a Caucasian male event, and it doesn't necessarily need to be.
But let me interject right there, because currently we live in a nation that is 70% white. So it would make sense that white people, other than basketball and hip hop, kind of dominate everything. I'm just saying.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. But if you take a look at if you were to take our racial makeup and put it in a pie chart, the same pie chart with 70% white and 13% black and 3% Asian and whatever percent Hispanic, it's not evenly represented on the trail. And there's a lot of sociological reasons for that, many of which include, so hiking is artificial and self-inflicted difficulty is what it is. You put yourself in really difficult situations. And quite frankly, if you talk to folks, black people specifically, why won't you want to go spend? Well, we don't we have enough suffering. We don't need artificial suffering, like a through hike brings you, right? So I've heard that before as an argument. So that's an entirely different conversation. But to answer the question related to Damascus, I think that if you're an other than white hiker, if you're Asian, if you're black, if you're Hispanic, that the trail itself could be a very comfortable place for you, because hikers are very accommodating, very open-minded, especially long-distance hikers that are living out there. I told you before, I thought the trail was a grand equalizer, and not in terms of socialism or communism. I just think it's a place where it opens your mind and it kind of cleanses your soul quite a bit. I got a lot of respect for someone that walked 500 miles. I don't care what you look like. If you just walked 500 miles, I don't care if you're brown. I don't care if you have buck teeth. I don't care if you have a hyphenated last name. I don't care what your sexual preference is. You just walk 500 miles through the mountains. I got a little bit of respect for you,
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so that's what makes it the great equalizer of existence with hikers. Now, are you going to feel comfy in some of these towns? No, you're not. I stayed in a couple of hostels where the Stars and Bars, the Confederate battle flag, is hanging right outside the front door. And if that's something that makes you feel uncomfortable, you're going to feel uncomfortable. If you think that every shuttle driver that's going to pick you up, named Bubba, he's going to be a not racist guy, well, you're wrong. Bubba's probably a racist guy, the guy that's your shuttle driver. So, and that's not a generalization. That's a fact. I do know about a shuttle driver whose name is Bubba, who's openly racist, and was openly racist with me because he thought since I was white, I naturally agreed with him. which I did not. I found many of his views quite stupid, actually. So the point is that, yeah, while you're on the trail, you're going to be great. You're going to be fine. You're going to be around people that are like-minded. Maybe not politically like-minded, but even the political differences. I'll give you an example. We hiked with a bunch of liberals, and you would combat with them all day long.
Damn right I would.
But at the end of the day, we're all going to the same place, eating the same noodles out of the same cook pots, and having the same experience. We all got wet when it rained. We all got tired when we hiked over 14 miles, and so we had that in common with each other, and it was actually fun in many ways that to have some differences, because otherwise, if everyone just agreed with each other out there, it would be quite boring some of those days, right? But my point is, yeah, so to answer the question, Damascus, the anti-Semitic remarks, the drugs, yeah, okay, yeah, not surprised a bit. Do I have some sort of moral outrage about that? No, maybe, but that's not the important thing here. The important thing here is, as a town, they're missing out on being inclusive enough to be strong capitalists and make the town thrive. So that's my opinion on the Damascus thing without knowing more about it.
No, I agree with you. I can agree with that, no doubt about it. I think it's any time that you let, hell, I think even in 2017, sometimes if you let your politics out, it's bad business because you're alienating half your potential clientele. Same thing.
Here's what makes the country strong, right? Anybody from any background, any race, any creed can start a business and can provide services and goods that other people are find worthy of paying for, and that's what makes us a strong country. We don't necessarily have to agree on everything. We don't have to have the same sexual preferences. We don't. So this is at the core of conservative thought is that I would prefer that you weren't a leftist and a snowflake, but I understand that you're allowed to be because this is America. But what I do understand also is that what makes this country strong is the fact that if you provide services and goods that have value and people buy them, that's what makes us strong because we're capitalists. And that's what gives everybody an opportunity. You can be anybody from anywhere, and if you provide a service or goods that are of value, you can succeed here, no matter who you are, what your name is, or what your religion is, or what your sexual proclivities are, right? So, yeah. So anyway, so I think we're going to talk about something else, right? We're going to talk about a hiker that's been.
Stacy Cazell is the next topic. Stacy Cazell, for you guys that do not know, we're talking about a woman who uses electronic legs, shall we say. She hiked the AT last year, so she claims this year was the PCT. Claims she did it in 5 months, even quicker than a lot of able-bodied hikers. John Kolker, I know you've followed this story. I just would like to start off with a quick answer on one thing. Did she hike the PCT?
No.
Go ahead and elaborate why. I just wanted to get that answer first.
Well, so yeah, this is going to be a long-winded answer because I actually did spend quite a bit of brain power on understanding the Stacy Cazell story, and because it's very meaningful to me. So I'm a hiker who has a medical history. I'm a hiker who is an unlikely hiker. I'm a hiker who shouldn't even be here. And not only am I here, but I was on the trail for 1,000 miles, and I'm pretty proud of that fact. And I never once pretended that I was a through hiker when I wasn't. And so for anyone with a medical challenge, like braces that assist them with problems walking, that claims that they hiked the PCT, and yet nobody saw them, nobody. So if you've done any long distance hiking at all on one of the big 3 trails in our country, in our great country, the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, or the Continental Divide Trail, you know. Huh?
No. I had a technical difficulty. Go ahead.
I got some reverb there.
Yeah.
You know that for able-bodied hikers, there is a certain amount of support necessary. You, for example, on the AT, you need to resupply every 3 to 5 days. You need, on occasion, you will need a ride somewhere. You will run into other hikers who might lend you water or food. It's a community that's constantly looking out for hikers all up and down the AT. Now, I've never hiked the PCT, but I do understand that the PCT is in many ways much harder than the AT. There's almost always sun. There's almost always snow in some parts, no matter what time of the year you start. And there are long stretches without water and food. And so there, in many cases, from my understanding anyway, you would have to stop at certain places because it would be the only place to get food, for example. And if you had a need to charge something like your legs, you would have to stop frequently to charge your legs. And so when she presumably hiked the AT, I was really amazed. What a great story it was, and I took it at face value, right? Because I was a knucklehead like everybody else, and we'll get back to that. But when she claimed to hike the PCT, and so many facts didn't stack up properly, and the biggest fact is nobody saw her. Nobody remembers her. Not a shuttle driver, not a hostel owner, not any other hikers, not anybody. Nobody saw her on the PCT. And then she didn't do the math properly. She actually gave herself a pretty aggressive start date and end date that even amazingly able-bodied hikers did not finish in that short of a time. So it was clear to me that she lied. Right away, clear to me that she lied.
Quick question for you. You know she changed her finish date. Let me ask you something. As a hiker, what is the 2 dates that you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you would never, ever forget?
Yeah, so for me, the 3 dates of significance are my start date, my summit date, and my end date, and in my case, my flip date, which was July 31st, right? And so you would never, under any circumstances, forget those, ever. They're as significant as the birthday of your child, or the day you got married, or the day you got divorced, or the day you got out of the army. It's a significant date. Those are significant dates. And so that's one thing that also kind of, I went, okay, you don't even, you got your dates wrong? Like, what? Really? So anyway, so the PCT is clearly a lie. And then it throws into question whether or not she hiked the AT. So here's why it's important. Lots of people bullshit about hiking the trail. I meet people on a trail that told me they've thru hiked before and they're just out doing a section. And you have real basic conversations about things like Blood Mountain or the climb out of the Knock, and they don't know what you're talking about. And they're clearly lying, right? And so my point is that doesn't matter. People lie about hiking the trail all the time. Just like people pretend they're airborne rangers and they never were in the military and they steal valor. I mean, a lot of people are posers and haters and fakers and full of shit, quite frankly. But why is it different with Stacy Gazelle? Here's why it's different. You represented a group of people that I refer to as overcomers and survivors. And I am an overcomer, and I am a survivor. And for you to have lied to everybody, USA Today, Today.com, Outdoor Magazine,
ESPN, for damn sakes,
CNN, ESPN. Now I get it. She got 2 weeks into it, and it was too hard. Whoa, holy shit! That's an experience I had. Well, I can relate to that. 2 weeks into my thru hike, I realized it wasn't a thru hike anymore. Too hard. Shit's hard. Okay, so I didn't mislead my followers. I didn't mislead people that were excited for me. I told them like it was. I'm going to hike as long as I can until it no longer makes any sense or until I run out of time. And this is quite frankly going to be a multiple year endeavor. Did it subtract from the validity of my medically motivated hike? No, it did not. As a matter of fact, people found it to be more realistic, right? People found it to be more in tune with somebody who has some things to overcome. Like, she didn't need to be the hero. She could have told the truth. Now, why do I think it's all BS? Because if I Google her, now you've been on the trail, I've been on the trail, I did 1,000 miles on the trail. I can Google her, and every photograph that comes up, every single photograph, is within a couple of points of a mile, like 0.3, 0.4, of a parking lot. There are several hospital owners that never saw her.
Like
Again, remember, we got legs we need to plug in, right?
Yeah.
So, dude, like, no, you didn't do it. And here's why it's important. If you're out there, so she wasn't raising money for any cause. She wasn't out there for the National Paraplegic Foundation. She wasn't doing that. It was worse than that. She was going to write a book about it and completely benefit selfishly from the endeavor. Now, I intend to write a book as well, but my main reason for being out there was for a foundation that's charitable. Now, okay, so what? She lied about it, big deal. But she was getting ready to profit from it, right? She was going to write a book about it, and it would have been a great seller. People would have bought that book. And so, dude, if you can't finish it, tell everyone you can't finish it. Don't lie about it. I understand the pressure to appear like a superhuman and to appear like a hero. I get it. I would feel a little bit of pressure like that myself because lots of people were excited for me and wanted me to do as much as I could, and many of them wanted me to finish. But, yeah, so I call complete BS. I'm sure that she's awesome. I'm sure as a person, I'm sure that she was well-intended in the beginning, but couldn't handle the pressure of it's too hard and I ain't going to get it done, so I'm just going to fabricate the rest of the shit. And it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate.
I agree, but here's one of my things, and I want to ask your thoughts on this. I believe that what she has done is put people's lives at risk because I believe she might have given other people in those same circumstances false hope that they can go walk into the Sierra Mountains in one of the worst weather years ever and survive it like that.
Yeah, maybe. But then again, you and I both know it takes about 2 miles of you ain't feeling it for you to quit. So whatever those last 2 miles are, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe she endangers some people, but most people, when they ain't feeling it, they're getting off. So I don't think that anybody would try to overcome the feeling of I ain't feeling it in the Sierra, in the Sierras because of a Stacy Gazelle motivation. But I get it. I mean, yeah, I get it. But what she does, though, is she gives a lot of false hope to people because she didn't do what she said she was going to do. And, dude, look, even if she had only hiked 700 miles with legs that are dragging her along, that would be astonishing. That would be amazing. That would make for a great book. But to fabricate the whole thing, and look, dude, that's the other thing. That brings up another conversation about this guy that was legally blind. I don't know who he is, but you and I have been on the trail, and I don't think anyone that's legally blind actually hiked the trail all by himself either, because I don't believe it. Like, I was out there, like, I got lost and I'm sighted. I got lost a couple of times. And how could a dog possibly follow white places?
Right.
So I think there's a lot of that going on. It's unfortunate. And what they do is they prey on people's willingness to believe you because you're special, right?
Yeah.
So we want to believe special people. We want to believe people. Let's face it. Dale, the 82-year-old guy that just hiked the entire trail, thru-hiked, oldest guy to ever thru-hike the trail, I kept wanting to see his summit picture. I was really jonesing for his summit picture because I wanted it to be true. I wanted it really bad to be true. And finally, after researching everything, I looked at all the key factors. He had a summit picture. He had a plaque picture. He had photographs of places that you could not park near. Okay, so then I bought it. I'm like, okay, cool. I think that Graybeard's the real deal, right? But it's important. It's important that people that consider themselves to be overcomers are telling the truth.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that when you fake it, it is stolen velour in its own way, but you're shitting on the accomplishments of real people that gave sweat, tears, and blood for 6 whole months to do this, because this is an amazing athletic accomplishment. And so for me, it's like having a fake Super Bowl ring, and it's just hard for me to. I can't stand it personally. But
I will give Stacy Gazelle some advice, and so here's the advice. Okay, if she ever watches this video, come out and tell the truth and apologize. And after you do that, I think people will be willing to accept your apology. It's completely understandable to want to be that person, to want to be that superhero who, with imperfect legs, as an unlikely hiker, to have done it, right? But you didn't. And so tell the truth. Tell us what you really did. Tell us about some of your accomplishments, and maybe do a do-over. Maybe next year you do a hike that is you're going to try to hike 100 miles, or you're going to try to hike 10 miles in each state as a person with prosthetic legs. That might be really cool.
Yeah.
You might get a nice following out of that. Try to do something that's reasonable.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I don't think she'll ever be forgiven by the hiking community because
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
And Stacy, here's what I want to offer you if you're watching, Stacy. Here's the platform. Come on here. And
exactly. I might be wrong. I want to be wrong. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping there's a summit video of Stacy Gazelle. I'm hoping there's video at Dragon's Tooth or at other places that there's no parking lot near. But I don't see them.
Right.
I haven't seen them.
I agree with you. Now, John, this has been a wonderful thing. Right now, what you've done, man, this has actually been a wonderful interview. Why don't you tell these people where they can find Heart Hike, or ways to get a hold of you, or ways to contribute to your cause?
Yeah, okay, cool. So thank you for that. A shameless plug that I'm about to make. So
yeah.
So the hike itself is called Heart Hike, and it has a website called hearthike.org. And the charitable beneficiary of all of my hiking efforts is the Ironheart Foundation. So you can Google the Ironheart Foundation. You can go to the ironheartfoundation.org website. And if you really wanted to research it, you could actually research IRS records online to see that they are actually a bona fide charitable organization and how their money is used. And so if you're interested in seeing all of the photographs and the whole timeline from way back in May when I started till just a few weeks ago when I surpassed 1,000 trail miles, there's a Facebook group called Heart Hike as well. That's 2 words, Heart Hike. And the hike's going to continue. So I want to end with, I intended to do 100 miles in 2018 and basically pencil in that area I talked about skipping. And also in 2019. And I'm trying to work out a way to leave 1,000 miles for 2020 and go back and finish in one fell swoop. One big 1,000-mile push. I know I'm capable of a 1,000-mile push. And so 2020 it is. I'm going to need some time to fill the war chest with the money necessary to do it. It's very expensive to hike.
Yeah.
It's not expensive to hike. It's expensive to leave your life for 5 to 6 months and not come back with it a complete shambles, right? So that is expensive. And yeah, so I am looking forward to doing that. But yeah, and I'll continue to represent the Ironheart Foundation over the next 3 years as well.
Excellent.
And yeah.
So let me, for the people that's coming out here in 2018, for the people that's coming out here or that plan on coming out in the future, what are your final words for the people that are inspiring to be through hikers, or even those with medical conditions that are inspiring just to get out there and make their own impact?
Yeah, so that's great. So I do have some advice, right? So, you when you get out there, there's an old saying that says, "Don't go too far, too soon," right? Too quickly, right? So, and that's real stuff. Like, it took me 23 days to hike my first 100 miles. That is unbelievably slow. I zeroed every 3 days. I was hiking 4 miles a day. So within that stretch, I triple zeroed because I was so tired. And there's no amount of preparation you can do. I mean, you can be physically fit before you go on a trail, but there's no amount of physical preparation you can do that's actually going to prepare you for what you're in store for. So the statement is, it's really hard. It's much harder than you'll ever imagine. And it's hard psychologically, it's hard physically, it's hard financially, but it's rewarding. It's the most rewarding thing you'll ever attempt. And there are moments of fun as well, and moments of comfort. And but for the most part, you're uncomfortable, you're tired, and
and you have to have the mindset of you're going to go as far as you can. And then one last thing, there's another cliche statement I want to make. One of the things you learn out there is that, and this is a quote of one of my good friends, Paul Saley, whose trail name is Pac-Man, and he says that your feet, can only travel as far as your mind will let them. And so it is a mind game. You have to be mentally tough. You don't have to be mentally tough when you start, but you have to know that you're going to have to be mentally tough, and you're going to have to allow yourself to evolve into somebody who's mentally tough. If you're not mentally tough now, no worries. Just be aware you're going to have to learn how to be mentally tough if you're going to do a thru hike, or if you're going to do anything close to 500 miles or more in one season. That requires mental toughness. Like I said, you don't have to be mentally tough now. You could have a lot of fears. You could be weak, actually, but you're going to have to evolve into someone that's not. And be prepared for that. And if you're not prepared for that, don't try. Don't even come out. So that's my advice.
Well said, man. Well said. I appreciate. And see, believe it or not, me and John was actually very, very passive on this interview. Well, what I mean is we weren't our normal selves. Normally we're clowning and making a lot of jokes, and today we tried to give you something serious because I really wanted you to get to know John. John, I appreciate you taking the time to be here, man. It means a lot to be able to present to these people, not just you, but the foundation you're working with, and to let these people know that somebody, regardless of their health, can go out there and do amazing shit, just to be honest. And 1,000 miles, man, that's amazing. That's amazing, man. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, man, no problem. And I do want to end with two other things. First of all hikes matter. I'll put that out there. All hikes matter.
Yeah.
So if you're a day hiker or a section hiker or a lasher, a long ass section hiker, or a thru hiker, if you're southbounding, northbounding, flip-flopping, the trail is worth it. And every hike has merit. Every moment you spend on the trail is infinitely better than any moment you have off the trail. And I guarantee that. I can guarantee you that as a hiker. And then the last thing that I didn't answer, the part of your question, was if you have medical concerns, if you're on meds, if you have physical ailments, do all your due diligence. Make sure your doctor knows what you're doing. Make sure that you've prepared to have your meds. Make sure that you, so what I did, and this is why I hiked 1,000 miles instead of 2,190 in one season, I decided I needed to always opt on the conservative side of every day. So if a day made sense to hike 8 miles, and if I thought 15 miles would endanger me for a dehydration or any other reason, I would do the 8-mile day. So you have to know your limitations, you have to embrace them, and decide that you can still do as much as you can do, and don't let it hold you back. I could have quit in week 2 when I decided it wasn't a thru hike. I could have become demoralized and said, I'm never going to make this, I'm quitting. And that's right. Instead, I decided I'm not going to quit, I'm going to move my finish line. And
well, damn.
Sorry about that. I guess I just got interrupted by an inbound call. But if your finish line is, whatever your finish line is, it's worthy of your effort. Okay? That's the last piece of advice.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. John
Bye,
Kolker.
bitches.